questions about cucumbers to homes on cul-de-sacs, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show with Stan DeFreitas, the dad, and James DeFreitas, the son. For the next hour, call in with your questions in gardening, growing your favorite veggies, and growing your profits in real estate. Locally, call 813-289-1860. Toll free 877-969-8600. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And a big good morning to you as we start off another edition of the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. And I am, of course, Stan, and you are?
And I am James DeFreitas. We might have to check our mic. We sound like we are in a tin can.
Sound like you're in a tunnel, a little bit of a tunnel. But we'll have Mr. Joe in there. He is Mr. Fix-It Man. He will be, I'm sure, going back and forth as we speak, along with the rest of our team, that will make sure we sound as good as possible.
I am in a
You
UFO.
do sound like a tunnel still.
I am in a UFO. Landing. Have you heard of it?
One thing I was going to mention is that you can actually see that the weather and stuff, do we need to change something here? And then I'm sure we will bang on stuff.
The magic of live broadcasting.
Yes. Well, it still kind of sounds tinny to me.
I'm still in the back of a UFO being dragged off to Mars.
Sounds that way to me. Nope. We had looks like a Jimi Hendrix.
That was a Jimi Hendrix moment
For a second. Anyway, of course, we are here. I mean, I'm used to doing a lot of live broadcast where you expect it almost. When you did a live broadcast from someone's parking lot, that isn't done so much anymore. But it used to be done, and I did my share. I think I did every Walmart garden shop in Tampa Bay. And when I was with another station at one point. And gosh, do you want to talk about things that can go wrong and will go wrong always when you are doing that type of thing. But anyway, we just keep on, as I say, that's our second tribute to Jimi Hendrix. And we will keep on going.
Testing. Oh, man, I am out of the UFO. I am back into normal world, and that is sounding good.
See, in the neighborhood.
All right.
And so we're glad that...
no, we can't sponsor them because they aren't sponsoring us.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, they might. There might be some good restaurant that wants to sponsor us and say, hey, we'll have
Well, now that you've mentioned it, the one thing I would say about the neighborhood and then eating good slogan people, stop rebranding. Stop making it look nice. Just make it to where your food is better. That's the one thing I would argue. Your corporate masters. Yeah. So that's just my humble opinion.
We're going to tell the folks if they want to give us a call locally. The number is 813-289-1860. That's 813-289-1860. Or you can call in at 1-877-969-8600 if you're outside the area. And we realize that there are folks out there who, as we go along, right now in vegetable land, of course, I'm still getting avocados every day. Looks like my carambola is starting to put on some more flowers, which I like, which means more fruit. Got to have the flowers before you get the fruit. Mm-hmm. And then also...
and for our novices out there, that's also known as the star fruit.
The star fruit. See, you got it. I've taken you with a mind full of mush and turned you into a horticulturist.
Mainly still mush.
But yeah, we're working on it. One mush at a time. Anyway, so we're here, and, cherry tomatoes can still do well. Actually, I had a little cherry tomato the other day off my little earth box, and which I like. I still use them. Hopefully, they'll be coming back sometime shortly. They were loyal sponsors with me on another station. And good product. I always like it. I like it if it's, let's say, a good restaurant, good product, something I can get behind, like Carl Utzi Tree Service. I can get behind him because I know Utzi does a great job, and Carl is one of the leaders in the arboriculture field. When you have problems about trees, I had a lady call me last week. She goes, I heard you mention Carl Utzi. Is he really that good? And I said, he really is. So give him a call. And
there's your shameless plug of the day.
Well, but it was a true story. Sure. And go ahead.
Well, we do have some housekeeping, and we always like to deal with the housekeeping. And when I say housekeeping, that just means that people have typed in their question. They've gone to askmrgreenthumb.com, and it's just like it sounds. It's just MR, not the MISTER. So it's askmrgreenthumb.com. So you go to that website, and you'll go to the Ask icon, and then you can type in your question. And more importantly now, you can also attach a photo, because if you attach a photo, then Stan can take a look at it and he can make that identification of that weird plant or weird weed that's growing in your yard. And because of that
wacky weed,
then what we'll do is on the air, imagine that, we're going to on the air. So we had a question come in, and somebody wanted you to identify this yellow thing. So I printed it out, and it looks a lot like that. I know now it's putting you on the spot, and I realize that in advance.
Yes, I was going to say, he doesn't give me any pre on these. Well, that's actually an Alamanda.
Okay, so that's what he was asking, is this person who typed in diligently to askmrgreenthumb.com, they went in and said, hey, guys, could you help me figure out I've got a few plants here that I know are growing in my yard. I have no idea what they are. And he's talking about Roundup. We're not a big proponent of Roundup. We would say as a last resort.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is officially an Alamanda.
In my opinion, yes. Let me see it again.
He's doing a double check. So this. Here, I'm putting it up to the glass. And
we do have this plexiglass between us because we're all COVID safety compliant.
It's PG-13 in here. The plexiglass is not a reenactment of Midnight Express. So, we're good.
Yeah, in my opinion, that is an Alamanda.
Okay, so this is
it's a nice, pretty big yellow flower.
Okay.
Flowers about 10 months a year. Not much of a problem other than if we get a real cold snap, it could get injured back. But normally, I remember a really hard freeze, the worst freeze that I ever remember, and it was killed back down to the ground in St. Pete, and it came back. And so that's a good testimonial for most of Tampa Bay with the Alamanda. But you got to remember back then, I think it was 62, I think it was, we had 3 days of below freezing temperature.
Holy smokes.
And that's just the
ground froze?
No, but all of the Australian pines along past the grill on the beach, got killed. And if you were a youngster back then, you went to the beach. Let's say I went with Mrs. Herr, and she was great, taking Jeff and I. You'd have to watch your feet because
you mean Jeff's wife, not the actual Jeff's wife.
No, Jeff's mom.
Jeff's mom. Got it.
Yeah,
that would be kind of weird.
Not Karen.
Yeah.
But May, and May would take us to the beach, and she was always great too. She had this big cooler of drinks and stuff. She was, well prepared lady who. But I remember you had to watch the little seed pods of the Australian pine, which is not really a pine. It's Araucaria. No, that's it's
kind of early for
confusing that. Yes, but it's Casuarina, I think. Casuarina was horsetail.
See, you still got it.
Casuarina, and it was very much part of the beaches. Now we don't see them much anymore. They have kind of a neat blue-green color, and they're whispery. And
what are the pine trees that look like pine trees but probably aren't trees that I see growing in the water? I don't know. Just they have these really great root structure things, and they're putting you on the spot.
Put me on the spot here.
Well, while you're thinking about that, we've got another plant ID to stump the garden man here. Now he's now all of these are coming in from a Mr. Shane Needham, our technical wizard on being able to help us with anything that's technical related to askmrgreenthumb.com.
Mangroves that came to me. Mangroves. That's what we're thinking of. All of a sudden, my brain went away.
That's okay. It's early. It's allowed. So anyway, so he thinks it's some kind of climbing jasmine or something, but I have no idea. So that's why we took a picture and had him send it to us via Ask Mr. Greenthumb. So this is it's not very tall, but that's kind of what it looks like. What are we thinking on this particular guy? I mean, what can we narrow it down?
I think it has. My question was if it had little white flowers, and I think it does.
Yeah, it does. It looks like it does have little white flowers. And actually, what I'm showing Stan right now is a kind of a green jasmine-looking plant, but probably not jasmine. It's got these leaves look like the kind of something else.
Yeah, I still think I think it has jasmine in the name.
Okay,
and,
so it's jasmine-like.
Yes. That's what I think it is, and that's the reason it has a little white flower. Probably a little fragrance to it, too, I'd ask him.
Yeah, so another thing then we could give people as a good tip. When you're getting ready to submit a photo on AskMrGreenthumb.com, the other thing I would say is not only a wide shot, but get close on the leaf, and if there is a flower that comes out, take a picture of that too, because those are all very good identifiers in terms of being able to determine what the plant is, because that's what they use in terms of being able to go through and make positive identifications on plants, as they need to see more data in terms of being able to, there's probably, 5,000 different kinds of jasmines in the world?
There's bunches of every family. I mean, in some families there's, thousands and thousands of varieties. Not so much with jasmines, I don't believe, but there's offshoots of something that has jasmine in the name.
Well, I'm always shocked because whenever I think it's, there's this kind and that kind. Well, no, there's usually like a couple thousand different kinds of something.
There are a bunch. I mean, there is just a buku plethora of...
A buku plethora.
Plethora, yes. I don't know if I've
A plethora of piñatas, El Guapo.
Hey, that is the reason I am so smart. But that was a great movie. Loved it.
I don't know if they could make that movie today.
I was going to say, I'm not thinking that might be politically correct to even have that movie today.
Probably not, but it was funny for its time.
It was funny.
Yeah, so we've got about 40 some odd seconds left, and then we've got another question, but I could ask it on the other side of the break.
We'll pace them out.
We'll pace them out, absolutely. But we are here if you have any gardening and or real estate questions. And again, if you have an interesting real estate closing that maybe didn't close exactly the way you'd like it to, those are interesting. So bring those questions, bring those things that happened with you.
Sure.
And we'd love to hear about it because that's fun. And we don't care what real estate company you're with. Call us about it. Tell us about who you are, what you do, and we'll put you on the air. So that's 289-1860, 813, of course, and we'll be here.
Stay with us as the plant talk and real estate talk continues.
Want to talk real estate auctions? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online at aflre.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial problems with flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Call now, 813-289-1860. Toll free, 877-969-8600. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we are here to help you. We just saw on Facebook Live, I guess my old buddy Steve Wigner's out there. We had to get Steve. Steve, you ought to give us a call sometime. We can chit-chat about old radio days, since Steve was the kind of the manager there at a network that I worked at many moons ago, and I'm not even sure what I think Steve's doing some inspection on homes now, which kind of fits in with what we do.
Absolutely, yeah.
Steve, you ought to give us a call. We'll give you a little plug there for you. 813-289-1860, and or outside the area, 1-877-969-8600. We'll put you on the air with us. And always feel like I have to go into my broadcast voice. Anyway, we're here.
Half the people I hear on talk radio nowadays, though, don't really have a deep voice.
When I first started in the business, though, I was worried about this. Now, we're talking almost 40 years ago. I kept thinking, oh, my gosh, these guys, this is Walter Cronkite. And I'm going, oh, my God, I don't have Walter Cronkite's voice. But I thought, at the time, I thought, well, I could sit there and go, well, I was talking to Nancy just the other day, and I've decided to go back and be a broadcaster. Anyway, that's how the old Gip started out. He was doing, he did a broadcast for sports, and he did one of his famous shows where he did it where they weren't even having it. He kind of made up a game, which I thought actually takes a lot of talent if you can go, somebody asked me the other day, said, what do you think about the Rays? They don't have any fans. I said, well, we've been getting used to that for the last couple of years. So,
Fans? Yeah. What do you need those for?
Actually, it's funny. Now, when you watch the show the other day, I was watching the broadcast, they have more noise now that they're artificially piping in than you typically got from the game.
So it's like an old sitcom where you have a clapter going on in the background, and it's just piped in.
It is. It's all piped in. Yay! And they have the organist guy and all this stuff. I'm thinking, it kind of seems surreal to have a guy doing the organ stuff and there's nobody really there.
Well, and I've seen some of the games, they have cardboard cutouts of people sitting behind
Actually, my neighbors who are season ticket holders say if they shoot on their section, I think there's a picture of both John and Carol that are there in spirit for the Rays.
So how are they handling that? I mean, if you are a season ticket holder and you're not able to come to the game, are you getting a refund?
Well, I don't know, since I'm not a season ticket holder.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, I guess that's a question that would be more geared towards the to Paul Pipes Porter.
Yeah, we'll have to ask Paul. Paul could tell us probably, no doubt, with his. We got to get Paul to call us in. He's, Mr. Everything as far as the Mr. Magic and Mr. Lightning and Mr. Broadcaster. When I first met Paul, he was my news guy, and Paul's a team player. If you asked Paul to come in here and do news, he could do it, and he was really quite a good newsman, besides being a very, one of the top sports guys in the area. It's funny, though, once you get labeled, you're a sports guy, you'd go, oh, Paul probably couldn't do the news. Well, he could. Paul's a seasoned broadcaster who you could put him into any situation on radio, and he would do a fantastic job because he has been doing it for most of his life.
Sure.
But, in fact, as far as broadcasters go, I always thought Paul was good at that, and he was good. You need the news guy to come in there and hit the news hard for you.
Absolutely.
And we were on a station that isn't even around anymore, WPLP, which actually is kind of ironic that it was on 570, which is owned by our sister station here now.
Yeah, so there you go. Life is one big circle, as they say.
Well, more so than you know sometimes.
Absolutely. So we do have one more plant ID that came in. Again, this is to try to stump Ask Mr. Greenthumb here. And again, this came in from AskMrGreenthumb.com. So again, it's just like it sounds. It's MR. It's not Mr. It's MR. So it's AskMrGreenthumb.com. You go to the little Ask button, and once you get to that on the website, then you can type in a sort of like an email thing, and then you can attach a photo and anything like that. You can do it all right from your phone, photos really do help in terms of the plant ID. Mm-hmm. You're able to see stuff more.
Otherwise, it's like karmic. I've got to hold it to my forehead and. Like Johnny Carson.
Right. So this question is he believes that this is romaine lettuce. But the question is, any reason that you could explain why my romaine lettuce is nearly 4 feet tall instead of a low bunch?
Well, when it's this hot and sunny, a lot of times it'll go ahead and, what it's doing is it's bolting. And the problem...
What's it called again?
It's bolting. It means it's flowering.
Bolting.
It's bolting, and that's the reason it's getting so nice and tall.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you need to keep cutting those little seed parts off because then it starts to get more bitter. And now, if you don't mind a little bitter lettuce, and I've eaten lettuce that was that tall, and it's a little bit bitter, but I go, there's probably more nutrients. I can always psych myself up into something on why.
Okay, so this won't taste as good when it starts vertically going this high.
Yeah, now that it's doing what it does. Typically, he should have probably already cut it off, and sometimes I'll cut it off fairly low, leaving just a leaf or two, and it often will send out another leaf, another bunch.
Another stalk.
And now it may not be kind of like broccoli. Where broccoli, when you cut off the main broccoli head, you'll get side shoots coming. Uh-huh. Now, they're not going to be usually as big as the original, I'll call it mother head, if you will. Uh-huh. But they're still tasty, and I do that often. If you keep cutting those heads off and don't let it flower, broccoli will turn into a beautiful yellow bouquet if you don't.
If you don't.
And but with lettuce, it also has like a little yellow flower. but it's small, and then it starts to get more bitter.
Sure.
And that's the reason you keep harvesting.
And if you have gardening and or real estate questions, give us a call today at 813-289-1860. We're also on Facebook Live, so if you are stationary or if you're getting out of your car, as you're wont to do on a Sunday morning, you can watch us that way.
Stay with us as the plant talk and real estate talk continues here on AM 860. The Answer.
Interested in having a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at askmrgreenthumb.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions on gardening, real estate, or both? Call now, 813-289-1860. Toll free, 877-969-8600. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
I was going to say, I looked at a yard the other day. St. Augustine had looked like somebody had taken a blowtorch to it, and I knew
Cinch.
Chinch bug. Yep.
Cinch bug.
A cinch bug. Chinch
Cinch.
bug.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
cinch.
thought it was a cinch.
You can call it a cinch if you want, but chinch is the right. And normally they're going to show up near the hot area, sidewalk, street, somewhere where it's really hot. And, of course, it's really hot every day. Here in the 90s, the chinch bugs just go, boy, is this great. This is what we love. And
Yeah, you don't really see that same problem, as we go into a cool spell, dare I say cool spell.
Oh, you for want. And, yes, it's times like this, I think, I really do like the cool season. But and then when it's cold, I normally go, gosh, I really like the hot summer season. So it tells me that we're never, ever totally happy with wherever we're at.
No,
but,
human beings have a very narrow temperature range with which we are happy. And if it goes 2 degrees above that very narrow range in either direction, we're generally going, wow, I need a sweater. Oh, man, I need to turn the air down.
That's true. Well, when it's really cold, I keep thinking of the cold states. We talk about cool here, and it's not like upper New York State or
we
Michigan
have fireplaces going when it's 68.
That's true. Well, you'll see the ladies will all get their boots out.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, they will. And it's one of these things, too, where, it's, you understand why we have snowbirds. And by the way, God bless snowbirds, because one of the things I've always said, people that live here in Florida often get annoyed. And I always think to myself, well, you shouldn't, because the people that come in from up north, that come down here to partake in our beautiful weather, they keep the economy going here in Florida. So God bless snowbirds. Yes, it's a little more annoying when there's more traffic and it takes longer to get seated at a restaurant when you can get to a restaurant. But, we love snowbirds. Snowbirds are a wonderful thing, and I understand it, and it's basically they're getting the best of both worlds, in terms of the temperature aspect. They're not having to go through our debilitating, bone-crushing heat of the summertime. Although, you and I have been up in places like Ohio, and
It can get hot there as well this time of year.
Yeah, we were at the Columbus Zoo, and I remember having a newspaper over my head.
It was hot.
And I kept going, I'm going back to the polar bear attraction again. Dad. You've seen that 10 times, son. Well, it's cold in there because you keep it cold with the polar bears, Dad. And then...
We can't stay all day in the polar bear
Right.
exhibit.
Yeah, and then you're like, okay, that's the third time he went back to the ice cream truck. Literally I was just, no, I don't want to buy any ice cream. Can I just put my head inside that ice cream thing there? Because that seemed to really cool it down.
That was a hot, I assumed, I don't know why, I kept thinking, Ohio, I know how cool it gets there. Now, we were back there again in the fall.
Mm-hmm. And it was very nice.
It was very nice. And in fact, we made the suggestion to them at the time. They had some of the top horticultural people who were in media up to Ohio.
The technical term is influencers, buddy.
There was a bunch of us, and all over the country. Kind of neat for us to get together. And they don't do that anymore because I think every company is like, where do we spend our money? Well, people who might help us? No. Let's not do that. But of course, then we don't mention their products either. So
right. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah, that's the one thing I would say to these multi-billion-dollar companies is that, it's fine. You can tighten the belt, which I think is hilarious that you're going to tighten the belt with the people that cost you the least. But nonetheless, you can do that. But then, wow, let me go to this other product that's not made by you. I mean, so that, that happens too. Anyway, switching and pivoting a little towards the real estate side of things.
Sure.
So I printed out a 10 commonly asked questions by home buyers.
Okay.
And I thought I would kind of go through this a little bit just because I think it's an interesting. I like to see if the person that's writing the article, if they've actually ever been in the business, because I'll know pretty quickly because of the questions that they ask. And most of these are pretty good. I mean, one of the things that it has in here is, the very first question is, should I buy or should I rent a home?
You should buy.
Well, yeah, normally, I would argue that you should always try to be buying something if you can. But I would also say that if you know you're going to be in a place, if you know you're only going to be there for months and not years,
then you should rent.
Yeah, then I think that changes. So that's the first thing I would probably. This is on this list. The second thing on this is, what kind of home can I afford? And I thought one of the most important things that Dan Ortiz from Motto Mortgage was talking about last week.
Dan did a great job, by the way.
He did a fantastic job, as we knew he would. But one of the things that he was talking about, he goes, look, he says, it's not what you can qualify for in your best year. You really should be thinking about, what can I qualify for in an average year? You really need to think about the law of averages, because it's not how great you did in that 1 or 2 year period that you can show and demonstrate. It's really about the mortgage that you can afford for the life of the mortgage.
And I showed that shows really good character on Dan's part, that he wants to make sure he's not going to try to push you into more. He's going to tell you, here's where it ought to be.
Right. I mean, if you can qualify for $400,000, that's great. But maybe where you're more comfortable is just spending $300,000. Maybe that's where the mortgage price is something that
or $350.
Yeah, or $350, or who knows? But maybe in your particular situation, that's better for you over the life of the loan. I mean, and that's something that people really need to think about. Especially, I don't need to preach this to people that are on their third or fourth home. You guys are pros. You've done this many, many times. You've been through the process. But I would say, maybe, for the first-time home buyers, and believe it or not, the first-time home buyers are, they're getting a sticker shock of what it costs to buy in to the American dream in terms of what a home costs. Especially in Pinellas, Hillsborough counties, we're in a situation where there, very little inventory. And people are sitting on properties. They're just kind of sitting on there. Well, should I or should I not? And and my thoughts, to that are, well, look, if you think you should sell it, you should sell it. If you want to hold. I get why, with the unfortunate events that have occurred in the last 5 months, I get why there's less of a tangible understanding as to whether or not it makes sense to sell right at the moment. But again, you can let fear always guide your guiding principles, or you can just be bold and try to get things listed and sold. What I'm finding, and I think most of our real estate colleagues would agree, is that those people that are selling, most of the time they are getting them sold. So the buyers might be putting on masks, putting on gloves, putting on booties, but they're getting their booty to the property in order to see it.
Nice segue.
And, yeah, you like that? I can do that all day long.
I like it.
But anyways, yeah, and especially this early in the morning for my brain to be that fluid, that's amazing. They're getting themselves to the properties at least enough to where they feel confident in making an offer on these properties, which is great, because that means real estate business is still transacting. And, and if you can transact during a pandemic, my goodness, that shows you how resilient most agents are.
Well, I'm always amazed. Well, especially the agents we're working with down at Remax Metro. They seem like a really aggressive, we'll make it happen, whatever it takes, and I admire that.
Yeah. I mean, most of the agents, when we had the managers meetings and when we have the sales meetings that they do once a month, when I listen and see the charts that are put up, you wouldn't even know that there was a pandemic going on. I mean, based on the volume that those, and I don't think this is happening at every company. I think some companies are doing better than others, but in particular, RE/MAX Metro is knocking it out of the park. I mean, it's a testimonial to their craft. It's a testimonial to their perseverance and being able to say, look, this isn't going to stop us. We are going to keep doing business. We're going to keep doing it safely. We're going to make sure that we take the precautions that are necessary. I'm sure 99% of the agents at RE/MAX have hand sanitizer on tap, and they're ready to make sure that a would-be buyer that wants to go look at the property is going to make sure that they're going in, looking at it, seeing it, and then not leaving anything behind for the seller in terms of something they wouldn't want.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing. So the next question on the list says, when should I apply for a mortgage pre-approval? Well, you should definitely do that before. You definitely want to go look to find out what you can buy. Now, it's amazing because we were saying this last week. People won't go buy a stick of gum without making sure they go and they look in their wallet and make sure they have $2 to go pay for their Hubba Bubba.
Right.
I don't know if that brand is still in marketing.
You may be dating yourself just a bit. No.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, the point I'm getting at is people will make sure that they have the funds to go buy gum.
Sure.
But somehow real estate, that's different. I can just go look. Well, isn't it more fun to go out and look at properties that you can pull the trigger on? I mean, I just think that makes so much more sense. And that's why you should really call our buddies here at Motto Mortgage. Go talk to someone like Dan and find out, hey, look, this is what I can afford. This is what I think we should be looking at. And here's the market segment that makes sense for our purchasing power.
I agree. I think, and I remember being a youngster, let's say about 19, looking about my first home or thinking about it, maybe 20, 21, and thinking, well, let me go look at the homes first, and then I'll worry about getting my money together, which was totally backwards, totally wrong. But being a youngster, and I hadn't got into the program yet, buying a home. But let me also mention, too, recently I'm coming up for my homeowner's insurance, and I'm amazed, of course, they've blanketly across the way, it's gone up about 20% or more. And
is that all?
Then you get people contacting you with what I call, half of what the offer is. Now, it's not a real offer, but it's a pretend offer. And it's like, switch. Call us now. So when I did call, I thought, well, I'm a sucker. I'll call and see if, this sounds too good to be true. Well, the old thing, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So when I did some calling and checking, lo and behold.
Right, yeah, and exactly. And I mean, so that's one of the things that I think is a little bit disappointing is that, I think most of us are at the point, especially with, marketing, guys, don't just put up a shiny little brochure. Make sure that it's something that you can actually have on offer. And it's one of the things that Stan and I pride ourselves to in the real estate auction world is if we say something, even if it's not advantageous to us, we're going to live by it because that's what we promised, and that's what we're going to do. So, I'd like to say to you guys, if you have any gardening and or real estate questions, give us a call, 813-289-1860 or toll-free 877-969-8600.
And you stay with us as the plant talk and the real estate talk continues. If you're a real estate agent and you've got something you want to add, we'll let you go and do a little free plug. Tell us about your favorite property and where it's at. We'll be there to help you all the steps of the way. Stay with us.
Want to talk real estate auctions? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online at aflre.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial problems with flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Call now, 813-289-1860. Toll free, 877-969-8600. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we're here to help you. And one of the things that James and I both love to do, and that's we help people with real estate. We also help people with gardening problems. I looked the other day, there was went out for a consult, and the Sago had, of course, scale on it. And the lady had pretty much gotten rid of the scale. She'd been spraying with some oil-type material, and I used another kind of a non-toxic...
like neem oil?
something similar to that I was using, and kind of sprayed it for her too. And because she was looking for something that was relatively non-toxic and yet would do a pretty good job in helping. It just takes sometimes a little bit more if you're going with something that isn't a traditional pesticide. But sure. I have some customers, I don't do a lot of that anymore just because of time and age and stuff, and we're spending more time with helping people with real estate. But sure. I do some consulting work, and I still work on a few eminent domain cases where when someone's property is taken, when they put a road through or they build a bigger school or whatever it may be, I get involved in that. And I always enjoy, there again, I think I'm helping people because often I feel like the individual gets run over by people. I mean,
they do.
By law, you're supposed to be compensated as if you've never been injured.
And you're talking about the right of eminent domain. Yeah. Well, even driving over, every time I drive to the station, I have to come over to the Courtney Campbell, and it's a beautiful drive. Mm-hmm. But I remember when you would come off of, say you're coming from the airport and you're driving over to Clearwater, you would see the fine establishments of Joe Redner. No, I'm not saying I ever attended those places. I was too young, but I remember those places being there. And the tie-in is, again, when they decided to widen that road and get rid of the Red Lobster claw that used to be there. Mm-hmm. There used to be a Red Lobster restaurant.
I remember going there.
Yeah, so not too far down from the Joe Redner establishments. Mm-hmm. But again, that was considered a public good where they came in, they widened that area to make it to where we now have this very intricate on-off system in terms of connecting to the Courtney Campbell.
It does seem to move smoother.
It does move smoother. So sorry, Joe, you'll have to move your nudie stuff somewhere else.
I'm sure he took it all the way to the bank.
Well, I'm sure he did too. But that's the thing too, is that again, even if you are not a fan of what somebody does for an occupation, they're still entitled to compensation under the Constitution through eminent domain. So whether it's that or it's a nursery, we worked on roadside nursery up there in terms of getting them compensated. The nice thing about Lady Justice and the scales of justice is that there's a blindfold on for a reason.
Sure.
And it doesn't matter who you are. If you've been injured, you should be compensated. And the same thing goes with eminent domain. And it is fun to work with the little guy. We've worked on the opposite side of that too for the government. But I would say mostly we help a lot of the homeowners that are being, inconvenienced. I think is putting it mildly in some situations.
Actually, I worked for the attorney that worked for Joe.
Oh, well, there you go.
So there's a tie in there, and I actually worked with them on probably 25 to 50 cases. I'll tell you later who that was.
Sure.
But, actually, he's not working right now. He's retired. The guy who did the main working on that case. Good guy. Actually, I did a couple of, when I was able to do a little more, I took some canoe trips, and you did too.
Yeah. I remember, yeah.
Some kayaking trips.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun, and so I guess I would say is we do work with the finest eminent domain professionals, attorneys, appraisers, and sometimes it doesn't it doesn't always come from the attorney. Sometimes one of the things that it comes from is the homeowner hears it and says, "Oh, well, wait a second, I think that we're undercounting my plant value, my tree value in my yard." And, in certain circumstances, I mean, especially if you have a nursery and you're being impacted by an eminent domain case, that could be millions of dollars that you're leaving on the table that the government isn't compensating you for. That could be worth more than what you had initially thought was possible.
Yep, especially if you're dealing, an appraiser may know, homes. They know homes. They don't always, in most cases, about 99% of the time, they don't know plant material. Mm-hmm. And so you probably are not getting compensated as you should be, mm-hmm. I've had, different attorneys go, well, we don't really care. Well, you should care. If you really care, then you want to make sure that every tree and shrub is compensated that they're compensated as they should be.
Sure.
And if you're not, that it's just a fluff job.
Right. Well, and one of the things I would suggest too is that a lot of times when you're hired, your company is hired in order to come in and provide expert witness testimony as to what something is worth in terms of the horticultural aspect, you're kind of thought of in a secondary or tertiary aspect, which is not too uncommon. It's kind of like the same thing with the auction business in terms of auctioning off real estate. We sometimes are thought of in a secondary position. It was like, oh, well, I'm going to lose the property and blah, blah, blah. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. You could have thought of us from the beginning. You stand everything to gain and nothing to lose by elevating that status. In terms of auctioning off real estate, maybe you have that client out there who can't sign a 180-day contract or has no intention of going along with a 180-day contract, has no intention of giving you that much time as an agent.
Sure.
So, and maybe for good reason. Maybe they've taken that job out to Silicon Valley. Maybe they've taken a really, good tech job somewhere out west, and they've got to pick up and move in the next 45 days. Well, geez, you could be in a situation where you're relying on one of these companies to come in and make an offer, and maybe that doesn't apply. I hate to say it, but these offer pads, they have limitations as to what they're going to buy. If the property is over $500,000, they're going to say thanks, but that's not a type of property we're purchasing.
Or maybe they're going to give you a really low offer too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that especially other real estate companies out there that they'll have programs. Well, we'll buy it in 29 days. Well, yeah, but you may not like the price it's going to be offered in 29 days. And and again, with real estate auctions, one of the secret sauces that we have is competitive bidding. We try to get people into the idea of thinking, hey, I don't want to lose this property and I don't want that guy to win. And if we get into that kind of scenario, then typically we'll get over the retail value of that property because there's that win aspect that will take place. I've got to win it.
That's right.
So, and again, we are here all for the next 2 hours, or I should say next hour, 813-289-1860 if you have any plant and or real estate questions.
Give us a call. We're here to help answer all of your gardening questions and real estate questions. If you've got questions about something doing right or wrong in your yard or garden, well, I'm a horticulturist. I'm here to help answer those questions, and we're here to help your real estate questions as well.
For everything from questions about cucumbers to homes on cul-de-sacs, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show with Stan DeFreitas, the dad, and James DeFreitas, the son. For the next hour, call in with your questions in gardening, growing your favorite veggies, and growing your profits in real estate. Locally, call 813-289-1860. Toll free 877-969-8600. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And I'm James DeFreitas, and actually Stan is still getting coffee, so I will fill in, and I'll talk a little bit about what I know best, which is real estate. One of the things that I would say, and I'm kind of going through this list that I have here, it's talking about buying homes. And one of the things I would say nowadays is that people are, potential buyers they're more prepared now than they have ever been in their entire lives. I mean, they will go in, they will have done a zestimate, they will go in, they'll have they'll even have an idea of their upper end of what they want to pay based on the amount of money. They've got everything just kind of researched out. So one of the things that I always say is I'll always have the zestimate printed out when I'm looking at a home, especially if it's somebody that's selling a home, and I'll have it for them, and I'll go, hey, I already know what you know, because that's part of our job as real estate professionals, is making sure that they know that we're one step ahead of them. And so he's back from getting his coffee. I mentioned you were on a delayed coffee break.
Well, I had to empty the K thing. It wasn't empty. If it wasn't empty, it wasn't making coffee. So
you're saying the complexity of the coffee machine was causing you trouble?
It was causing me trouble, and until I could figure it out, and I had to. Joe had showed me last week. Sometimes you have to empty all the bottom things out or it won't work right.
It won't work
and
right.
I made it work right. Unfortunately, I got my cup of coffee, but yours I didn't have time for.
Well, that makes perfect sense. This is par for the course. You've come back empty-handed.
Well, not totally empty-handed.
Well, from my perspective, it's empty-handed.
Well, but who made you your cup the first hour?
Exactly. So I guess we have a couple of guests here that we ought to get to.
We've got Julie, but let's go to Ty real quickly first. He's been holding longer, and then we'll come right to Julie. Ty in St. Pete, you want to talk about a flipping housing market. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning.
Good morning, fellas. How are you?
Good. Very good.
Great. Yeah, no, I have some cash on hand, and I wanted to get into flipping houses. A lot of people told me that going to a real estate, going to a broker, the broker's going to snatch up that deal before it ever comes down to the pipeline where I could have that deal.
Mm-hmm.
The adage is nobody's going to give away money.
Mm-hmm.
So where do I find these really, really bad houses in really good neighborhoods that I could go ahead and put some money in and have some equity in it before I put it onto the market?
Well, one of the things I would say, too, is to address what you're doing there is almost every property that we take on, and again, you can go to our previous properties at auctionfloridarealestate.com, AFLRE.com, all just the letters. But any property that we take on for auctioning is a really good deal. Most of the time when people get them, they're going to find that, that it's been on the market for quite some time, a lot of time, and not every time, but a lot of times it'll be in a situation where, the seller the listing was going to go expired for the agent, and the agent is tapping us on the shoulder trying to figure out another way to get it done. So a lot of times at our auctions, we will find a lot of investor types will show up, and because they know that there is a good deal to be had. So that's one location that I would, and again, it's a shameless plug for us, but I will say most of the time in our auctions, there are good deals to be had. Competitive auctions too. Yeah, go ahead.
I was also going to mention that sometimes when you see something that we're going to have an auction on, we recommend that you do a pre-offer and you go ahead and buy the property before it goes to auction. Because normally, and the last deal I was thinking of, we had a guy, Scott, down in St. Pete, great guy, and I knew Scott wanted this condo, and he wanted the property a year ago, and he came to us, and I said, look, if you really want the property, and I know you do, go ahead and buy this pre-auction, because once it goes to auction, you're probably going to pay $25,000 more, and because he was going, well, I got to pay you guys a buyer's premium. I said, you told me what you wanted to buy it for last year. You're still getting it for $20,000 less than what you were going to pay for it a year ago. So even if you do pay a buyer's premium, which you will, and he did, I said, you're still getting a good deal. And he was a funny guy too, a nice guy. I'm going to say he had a dog named Wrigley because he was from Chicago originally. And he said, if Wrigley likes it, I'm going to buy it. So here I'm giving Wrigley little doggy treats and stuff. No.
Okay, I have another question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Landscaping. I know a lot of folks probably don't really think about it. When you find one of these houses and you make them really pretty, modernize them, whatnot. Trees. Do trees matter a lot? If you want to transplant fairly large trees around the property, does that bring up property value?
Yeah, normally it does. It's usually good to bring in trees. I know there's one investor that always brings in palms. I think he used to be in the palm nursery business. And I think it's smart if you can get a good deal on the palms and bring them in. Let's say you're dealing with Tree Mart or someone else who's got a good deal on a palm, and you bring it in. I think you can enhance the landscape, and enhancing the landscape almost always is a good thing. I mean, coat of paint, this or that. Now, obviously, you've got a skill set probably, or at least you've got a crew that can come in and say, okay, if we need new roof, new electric, new whatever. So you can come in and do things a lot of people would be scared to do.
Sure.
And let's face it, I've done a roof before. It's a job. I mean, the middle of August, my hat goes off to guys who will get up there and put a roof on. When James and I did my roof about 18 years ago,
Well, that was a lot of fun.
And that was a lot of fun. And the inspector guy came out and said, "You guys did a better job than the company down the road."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, you're not going to find 9 beer cans out there by 9 a.m. either." But I don't blame those guys. I'm not
Hey,
judging.
I resemble that comment.
Yeah, I'm not judging, and I understand it. After a day or two, James was looking at me going, "Killer cure," because he was getting hot and tired of us going up.
Well,
doing it.
and to be fair, let me accurately paint the picture on his particular roof. I mean, his roof is 41 feet high. He lives in a 3-story home. In order to feel comfortable being on this roof, yeah, and the one section of his roof is a 10-2 pitch. So,
Guys, why would you even think about doing that yourself?
well,
Wow.
20 years ago was a different time and era.
I could do more things back then than I could today.
Yeah.
I had no fear about climbing up on 40 feet up in the air. It didn't bother me. I'd still probably do it, but my brain would. I don't know.
Yeah, the body. I think going back 20 years, it was a different time and era. I mean, and some of the pricing too that he had received for getting that roof done back at that time.
Yeah, there's a reason why. It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
That's true.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I didn't go up on that roof without a climbing gear, and of course, every professional company that went by was laughing at me the entire time. But I will say this: it saved my neck.
I put eye bolts up there, and we both wore climbing harnesses because, when you're at 40 feet, if you don't die, you're probably going to wish you had.
Yeah.
It's not enough to kill you, but it's enough to wish you were dead.
Yeah, exactly.
So I said, we're going to, Mrs. GT will be very upset with me if I kill my son on saving a few bucks on the roof.
Yeah.
And I decided that we would do that. And James is right. We had, a few roofing company guys went by going, "Well, look at that. You guys, if you can't chug a beer on the top of hanging over the side of the roof, you guys aren't real men."
That was a fun one. And, I will say, too, unlike regular roofing companies, one of the things that we did with his is he has what is called a double hip roof. And so it's sectional. So we didn't have to do the whole thing in one day. So what we wound up doing is like, a section over a weekend. So I think it was like 4 weekends we wound up doing that. And part of me was, I think at that time I was just so irritated with the pricing that he had received, because I think some of the pricing that he received, it was like, I don't know, $25,000 or something. It was it was a ridiculous sum. And again, we're going back to the year 2000 roughly.
And everything's gotten worse since then.
Actually, the upside of this whole thing is look at the great story that you guys have to tell.
Yeah,
well, that's true.
The fact that it's a great story, and it's a funny story.
Yeah,
and we didn't kill each other or nothing.
Exactly.
And ultimately, we had a good time doing it. I mean, we took our time, and and at the end of the day, when we were all finished and done with it, it turned out really well.
I think we were a 1/16 of an inch off over 40 feet, so that was pretty nuts.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
We actually popped a line though every 6 inches.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you'll keep a nice straight line. I actually started to hire some. I won't call them Jamokos, but these weird kids.
You just called them Jamokos.
Okay, well, these weird kids that came out, and they promised me they were roofers. And they got up there, and they started to do it, and I actually did pay them for taking off part of a section. But they were starting to put a roof on, and they were putting like 2 nails per shingle. And I said, guys, you've never actually put a roof on before, have you? Well, we helped our grandpa and somebody else. I said, yeah, but you haven't actually done it.
Yeah.
I said, because 2 nails, there's a reason, there's a code. And that's so all my shingles aren't on my neighbor's yard and their thing. I said, that's the reason we put so many nails per shingle. And
you guys weren't even using a nail gun. You were using hammers and nails, weren't you?
Yeah. How did you know? You must have been there.
That was a chore. I must say I had I found out muscles I didn't even know I had. I said, I don't think I could get up and do it today. My brain.
God love you.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where, at the time, Stan was tight for money, and I said, I know how to do it. Let's get up there and we'll give it a crack. And to me, the hardest thing about doing a roof in my mind is getting rid of the old one. The once you've got the old one off, then the rest of it seems like it goes pretty quickly.
Well, sure, in a normal Florida house where you're up maybe 12 feet up off the ground.
Yeah.
But the first roof that you guys did out of the gate was a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
A harness roof. You guys did a harness roof for your first speak out.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, that.
You know what? It's a skit. This is not a story. This is a skit for SNL or something.
One of my favorite shows.
I'll have
Saturday
to take
Night
some
Live.
pictures. What I'll do during this segment, before I put this up on YouTube, is I'll take some pictures of his house to show people how high up it was, so that people can go, "Oh my goodness, they weren't kidding."
Well, before we did the roof, we actually built a deck that circumnavigates the house, 1 story up, 10 feet up. Then, so I thought at least we had.
I appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you so much for the call.
We need to get to Julie too.
Yeah,
but
we'll get to her
right after the break.
We'll get to her after the break. If you want to give us a call, it's 813-289-1860, and we'll talk to Julie just as soon as we come back.
Want to talk real estate auctions? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online at aflre.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions on gardening, real estate, or both? Call now, 813-289-1860. Toll free, 877-969-8600. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we're here to help you with your gardening questions and also real estate. If you've got some problem that maybe is coming up, we have with us Julie Marcus. And I talked with Julie earlier in the week, and I said, Julie, I know you are the supervisor of elections for Pinellas County. And I said, I've got some questions because I don't really understand, everybody's going toward paper ballots, and I know you're shipping them out, and I'm kind of not really political either way. I try not to, at least on the show, and I'm sure Julie doesn't really get political either. But, Julie, good morning. We're glad that you would take a few minutes and tell us about what you do.
Good morning, Julie.
Good morning, Stan and James. How are you?
Fantastic. A beautiful day.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, it is definitely a Florida day.
It is. Now, I'm kind of confused, Julie. Tell me a little bit about what the supervisor of election does, and maybe I hear a lot about people getting paper ballots now. Everybody's doing it by mail, and I think that's probably great. Tell me about the pros and cons of that, or at least the pros.
Yes. Yeah, so we're going into a presidential election year, and we are, of course, in a pandemic. So a lot of voters are considering their voting options, and one of those options is to request a mail ballot. Mm-hmm. Pinellas County's been doing this for 12 years plus, and they love it. They've embraced this opportunity to vote in the comfort and safety of their home. Voters can just request a ballot. Keep in mind that whether you vote by mail or in person, you're going to be voting the same paper ballot. So our message is to voters, why stand in line for the same ballot you can have mailed to your home?
Makes
so
sense.
We started, yeah, exactly. So in May, we started with a goal of reaching 330,000 requests by the general election. We were at 272,000, and we are now reaching almost 340,000 requests. So and this is just for the primary, and we're still a month away. So that's exciting. Mm-hmm. That we have already surpassed our general election goal. So hopefully we can get now to about 400,000 so that we can have voters who can vote at home, alleviate the lines and situations that we may see going into the fall elections where persons who may have a disability or other consideration can vote in person in a more safer environment, being that we're in a pandemic. So mail ballots are a safe, reasonable option that voters should consider. If they do want to request a mail ballot to be mailed to their home, they need to do that by August 8th. From that point forward, it's pickup onlys. And so get on top of that for the August 18th primary.
That's
and
coming
then for
up.
the general election, you can always request a mail ballot at any time leading up to 10 days prior to the election so that we can get that ballot to you for the general election.
Do you have a number you can give folks?
Absolutely. Best way is you can go to our website at votepinellas.com. Our website has the official, accurate voter information that voters will need for any election. This is the source that we ask voters to go to, as there's a lot of information out there that is not necessarily accurate. or they can contact our office using 727-464-VOTE.
464-VOTE. That's great.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, one of the things that I would say that has come into my mind just since you've been on the phone here is if, again, elderly people vote. And one of the things I would think with the pandemic is they're more at risk. So, gosh, doesn't it make a whole lot more sense for them to be able to vote and not put themselves at risk?
Yeah, and that goes for everyone. I understand that there are persons who are at higher risk, depending on whether they have pre-existing medical conditions, what have you. Mm-hmm. But really, this option's for anyone.
Sure,
Any voter can request a mail ballot, and they should embrace this opportunity to vote at home. We've often said for families that have children, you can make like a civics lesson out of this. I mean, what a great experience where you get your ballot mailed to your home. You can have everybody gather around the dinner table, and you can talk about the democratic process. I know that there are a lot of parents out there that have been homeschooling their kids. This can be another opportunity to share what our representative democracy is all about, which is actively participating in our elections.
Absolutely. Now, that sounds like a fantastic way to do it.
And for young people who go, well, I'm working and it's hard for me to get off to go vote, this is another way you can include maybe folks that are, let's say you're young and you don't want to go vote, you don't have the time maybe.
Sure.
Your boss doesn't let you off,
I love that. I'm glad you brought that up. Again, when you vote by mail, you do not have to remember elections. We mail you ballots as soon as we have them ready to go, and you don't have to remember election dates. They just come to you.
All right.
When it comes to voting in person, yeah, you're going to have to take into consideration things like transportation. Can I get time off of work? Are my kids going to possibly get sick? Is it going to downpour like it normally does every afternoon?
Julie, thanks for being with us. I hate to cut you off, but we're coming up to the news here.
Sorry.
Kind of a hard break.
Yes.
Thanks for being with us so much.
Anyway, yes, thank you, Stan. Thank you, James.
Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Interested in having a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at askmrgreenthumb.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial problems with flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Call now, 813-289-1860. Toll free, 877-969-8600. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we're here to help you with your plant and garden questions. I want to thank Julie Marcus, who is a supervisor of elections. I think, one of the things that's great about our country is we have the ability to vote. And people, if you don't vote, don't complain. Mm-hmm. So get out there and vote. If you want to make a difference and change in the world, you need to vote. It's one of our honors, and I always feel good about going. I don't know, putting a little sticker when I go do it, though the mail by ballot seems like a good idea as well. We've also got my old buddy, Robert Pankow, and open up with him. There's nobody I know that knows more about hurricanes and storms. He does great stories, which he shipped all over the country. And Robert, without further ado, probably one of the most talented guys I know as far as a newsman and also knowing more about storms and hurricanes than anybody else I've come across. Good morning, Robert. How are you?
Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. Thank you for that flattering introduction. As you know, we're knocking on the door of the busiest time of the year for hurricanes. The peak of the season is late August, early September, and just in the news yesterday, our first landfalling hurricane in South Texas. As a Category 1, it did some minor damage, nothing too terrible, but right now the National Hurricane Center is watching an area of low pressure in between Africa and the Caribbean. It's called Invest 92. All of the computer models show 10 days from now it being possibly a storm threatening Florida. So now is a great time to start thinking and checking your hurricane supplies. If you need bottled water, if you need some shelf-stable foods, things like that, now would be a great time to start stocking up a little bit because you just never know.
Sure.
Hurricane season is always, a gamble. You never know where the storms are going to make landfall.
Well, you always do a great job on stories, and of course, I worked with you at another station, which I'm not going to mention, but you were great doing the news there, and you always, of course, you've been shipping stories about storms all over the country. I know you've done more with that than almost anybody I know.
Well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that back in 1992, I had a house in Homestead when Hurricane Andrew came through. Once you've experienced a major hurricane like that, you tend to take these storms much more seriously because you understand the kind of damage they can do. I'm sure you remember Hurricane Charlie, how the kind of damage it did down toward Charlotte. And again, that storm was predicted to come to Tampa. At the last minute, it took a right turn, went into Charlotte Harbor, just did tremendous damage, and then went right up through the center of the state. So again, the paths of these storms are just so unpredictable.
And now, with people with water, how much water should they have per person for how long should it be?
Well, they usually recommend about 2 gallons, 3 gallons a day per person.
Wow.
Myself, I always keep 2 or 3 cases of bottled water in my house because I happen to like bottled water. Mm-hmm. It's great for you, for your health. And, by next weekend, I'm sure a lot of other folks are going to be out there stocking up. So, as we know, because of the COVID, the supply chain has been interrupted to a degree. It seems, a couple of months back, none of us could find toilet paper. None of us could find, all kinds of things that you would normally take for granted. And that's not something I think you would want to do with the peak of hurricane season, coming right around the corner here.
I'm always amazed people will be out buying plywood, and they'll be people like to put tape all over their windows, and I've heard that really doesn't do a whole lot when you put tape on the window. They'll tape it from here to here to there to there. What's your opinion on that?
Tape does absolutely no good at all.
Okay.
All it does is leave a sticky film on your windows for the most part.
So we're saving people effort. If they're going to do it, they should probably put some plywood, or maybe this is the time you're going, I wish I'd put in double pane or stronger windows than the little single pane that came with the house.
Absolutely. If you don't have any kind of shutters, don't bother to tape the windows. That's just not going to do any good. You're much better off to either, go out, buy plywood or look for some type of professional shutters that you might want to install.
Makes sense to me. I was also thinking of, if you're looking at those trees right now, if that branch is like hanging over your front window or over the top of your home, you might want to be calling somebody like UTC Tree Service and saying, hey, now they may not be able to get to you before the storm.
I was just going to say that. I bet that they are busy up to their eyeballs in trying to address potential hurricane, properties that may be more susceptible to branches and stuff coming down. One of the things I was going to say, too, Robert, is that I happened to notice in the news last week was that there was a hurricane headed towards Hawaii, and that seems kind of rare.
It is. The Hawaiian Islands have been very lucky in terms over the years that because they're just such a small target out there, in the Pacific, that they don't get hit very often. But at this point, it doesn't look like it's going to be a major Category 3, 4, or 5, and I think you won't see a lot of damage. You'll see a lot of inconvenience. Mm-hmm. And speaking of the trees, that's a very important point. Over the years, we've seen tropical storms come through, like back in 2004. And what happens is that if you've got a large tree, like an oak tree, when the rain gets caught up in the canopy, it puts so much weight on the top of the tree that these oak trees with shallow roots will just tip right over in 40 and 50 mile an hour winds, something you would find in a tropical storm. Mm-hmm. So the idea of exactly. So the idea is if you can reach out to a tree service and get the canopy thinned out some, the chances of that tree, in your front yard being uprooted and coming down on your car or coming down on your roof, is lessened to a great degree. So that's an important point to tell people about.
Sure.
I was thinking now, if it's a hurricane out in the Pacific, they call it a typhoon, or is that still a hurricane?
Still a hurricane. Still,
okay.
Tomato.
Exactly. When the storm gets over to the area in the far Pacific, then they turn into tropical cyclones.
Okay. But it's still
essentially
quite
it's the
dangerous.
same thing.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely, pretty much. Just a different name.
Well, I think it's important for people to pay attention to that. And I keep thinking, with 2020 I keep thinking of, Marty McFly, where he said, whatever you do, don't hit 2020 on the machine, because it seems like, we've had the COVID, we've had this, we've had that, we've had problems. And, all we need now is another major hurricane.
Yeah, let's pray that doesn't happen.
Like a, Category 5 hitting our state would just be devastating. I mean, it would, anytime would be, but I worry that what more could go wrong in 2020? Do you agree with me, Robert?
Absolutely, and because right now that our emergency managers are dealing with COVID, it's putting a strain on them as it is. And when you have a storm coming, the first thing they have to do is start evacuating the nursing homes, which right now are in a fragile state. And again, with the hospitals have to move a lot of their patients, further inland if the storm looks like it's going to be a threat. So yeah, that's going to be a real problem for the emergency management folks to deal with both a pandemic virus like this and evacuations from a storm. So that's going to be real tricky for them.
I'd be worried about moving, older folks that in close contact with each other. And how do you move them without some close contact, and especially with the people who would have to move them? Gosh, could that be a Pandora's box? Could that be, like almost a perfect storm of bad things to happen?
Well, I think absolutely that's the case. Speaking of which, I wanted to pass along to folks that, a lot of folks will think, well, if a storm comes, I'll just go to a shelter, Well, a shelter is, as they say in the business, a lifeboat, not a luxury hotel.
Right.
And the conditions in a lot of these shelters are not great, because again, it's a lifeline to get you through the worst part of the storm. So they really recommend that you use what they call the buddy system. If you have a friend that lives inland, you're much better off to go stay with them. Mm-hmm. And than actually going to a shelter.
Yeah, that makes all kind of sense.
And something else we might mention too is that if memory serves me correctly, the number one reason people use for not evacuating is because of their pets.
Well, you've got two.
Yeah, so a thought there might be to go ahead and have some pre-planning as to where you might go on your buddy system. Make sure your buddy is okay with you bringing your pets with you, because the shelter that you may go to may not accept your pets.
Most shelters won't.
Yeah,
right.
So there you go. So and then that makes sense for obvious reasons. So so I definitely but that's the number one reason I've heard in the past that people will not leave their premises even when they should, is because they're going to write it out because of their pets. So a little an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I know it's an old cliche, but one of the things that it's something that we need to think about in terms of our planning.
And I would think.
And
go ahead.
One thing to consider is a lot of hotels now have become pet friendly because they're aware of this. That that is the number one reason why people won't evacuate.
Sure, yeah, and I've mentioned too the Lowe's Hotel company. Now most of and they don't advertise it, but most of them are pet friendly. So it's kind of an expensive place to stay, but it is pet friendly. So you can bring your. Now I'm sure they'll fill up quickly because a lot of people do know that. So
well, you in particular, James, I know with your two dogs, your two girls.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go without bringing your animals.
I sure wouldn't. But thankfully, I'm in Clearwater, and I think we're sitting at about 26 feet above sea level, so I think we'll be okay. But I'm much more concerned, say, where you're at in Oldsmar. I mean, I think you're sitting at pretty 5 or 6 feet above sea level.
Well, but my house is on concrete pillars, so
yeah, that helps.
It has to come up 10 feet before it affects my first floor, and then I've got a second.
And you have a boat, so you're good.
Well,
and a canoe.
And a canoe, yeah.
You're good.
Actually, the last time we had a bad storm, I put the canoe up on the deck to make sure that I thought, if worse came to worse, I would have a canoe that I had
paddle to go get your groceries.
Well, exactly. I'm a Boy Scout, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, clean, reverent, and obedient. So yeah, like old Paul Druin used to say, remember the obedient. But I'm one of those guys that I want to make sure I've got batteries for my light. I want to make sure I've got enough water, which I've got a couple cases of water. And I also make sure that we've got everything we need. Do we want to
Yeah, well, thanks so much for calling, Robert. It's great advice on hurricane preparedness. We definitely need that. And if you have other questions, give us a call at 813-289-1860. We are here to answer your gardening and real estate questions for about 10 more minutes.
Or 813-289-1860 or what?
Or 1-877-969-8600.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert.
Want to talk real estate auctions? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online at aflre.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions on gardening, real estate, or both? Call now. 813-289-1860. Toll free. 877-969-8600. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we're here to help you every way we can. I'm glad we had Julie Marcus, the supervisor of elections, on earlier, and she, I thought, gave some great information, which I think is important for people who want to get their mail-in ballots soon. And why not? You know, I mean, you don't have to worry about COVID. You don't have to worry about getting in your car, about car accidents, or getting somewhere. How much easier and simpler can it be than have them mail it to you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if we'd had more time with Julie, one of the things I was going to address with her is I know there's a concern out there. And again, I know that we've been doing it for 12 years, as she indicated. But there's a general concern that's being put out there that there could be some type of fraud that would go along with the election process. But I would say that if it's worked for 12 years, it's probably going to be just fine this year, too. So
I would think. I would think it would be, you know, if it's your ballot coming to you, you have it, you're responsible. Same way you'd be as if you're going into to a place where they're going to check you out. And also, I want to also thank Robert Pankow. You know, one of the, he's been a pleasure. I've worked with him for many years ago, and I'm so glad that we could have him on today. I saw him, he did a story the other day, and I saw it on Facebook, and I thought, well, it's a lark. Let's see if Robert still remembers me. And, of course, he did.
How could he not remember Mr. TT?
Well, he was great. He said, hey, sure, I'd be glad to do that. Normally, Robert gets paid good bucks to make up stories, which he does, puts everything together as a professional, seasoned veteran that he is. But I knew Robert would, he knows more about storms than almost anybody I know. I mean, he'll put a story together that I don't think most of the weather guys can put together. And, some of the weather, I know you met one of the weather guys one time from one of the big stations. And you said,
that was an interesting experience.
Well, and you asked him, he said, what's the weather going to be? And he goes, how in the heck should I know? Well, we'll say something.
He didn't exactly say heck, but yeah, let's say he did.
And he's one of the big time weather guys here locally, but we won't pick on him too hard. But I kept thinking, you came home and told me the story, and I said, did he really say that?
Well, he more or less was indicating that he was busy going to go golf, and that for me to just pull up the channel and figure out whatever it said was my where I was going to get my weather advice for the day. But that's okay. I mean, think about it for a second. I mean, these weather guys are plastered everywhere they go.
Sure.
And the moment they tell you it's going to be a beautiful sunny day and it rains, there's that.
They're responsible.
They're responsible entirely. Yeah.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. So. But there was an old movie. I don't know if it's that old, but it was a movie that Nicolas Cage did where it's the name of the movie is called The Weatherman.
Right.
And every time he got the weather wrong, somebody was throwing a yogurt at him in the movie.
So he didn't go too long without a yogurt facial?
Yeah, so almost every time he was having something thrown at him, whether it was a big Slurpee cup or something was being thrown at him. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody do that. I don't want that to be inferred. I am talking in the third person about a movie I watched and what happened in that movie to properly, legally cover myself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as fun as that might sound, don't do that.
Right.
And I think I vaguely remember that movie, but I'm glad you refreshed it for me.
Yeah, that's a good one, A Weatherman with Nicolas Cage. That's back when he was taking movies because there was a reason and rhyme to do so, not because he was trying to buy himself out of hock from poor decisions of making and financial decisions that he's made in the past. Now it's pretty much... direct to TV. Oh, you're going to pay me how much? Yeah, I'll do it. There's really, I don't see him being that picky anymore about the roles he takes. But nevertheless, yeah, so that was an interesting movie to watch.
I was glad to see the Rays lost their opener, and then they won yesterday, and I watched both, and I'm tickled to watch the empty stands, which of course they are, and yet they pipe in the crowd noise and stuff, and I'm thinking, it's kind of amazing, but maybe it's better. I kept thinking otherwise it would be you're in a library, you know.
Well, why don't they just do what they did in Japan, where they stuffed all of the stadium seats with stuffed animals to make it look like there was like a something in the audience. It's very interesting because it seems to me, and again, I'm no epidemiologist, obviously, because if I were, I'd be doing an entirely different show. But it seems to me that couldn't they sell like tickets like every 6 feet? I mean,
yeah, we think you could maybe have a little Tampa Bay Rays mask that you could put on.
I mean, it just seems to me, is it possible? I mean, has anybody looked at I mean, I'm sure they have looked at the practicality.
Well, I think in Japan they've done that. They actually spaced people apart, let's say 6 feet apart or 5 feet apart, whatever, and they'd have them all wear masks. And I don't think they've had any major outbreak of.
I mean, even if you had 20% show up, I mean, wouldn't that be better than none? I mean, that's just my thinking on this. I'm just trying to figure out how could we do it, keep it to where people are socially distanced and safe. I mean, it just seems like there is a way to do this, opposed to filling it with stuffed animals and cardboard cutouts. To me, that would be more valuable.
I would think through distancing and through masking.
Yeah.
I think it could be done. And I think it has been done. It's been done in Japan, and it seemed to work there. We'll have to ask Paul Porter about that. That's more a question for him. But I also would think, if you're making $130 million and you don't have any fans coming in there, eventually the general manager is going to be calling you in going, that $130 million that we talked about, well,
I can't imagine that can go on forever.
We're going to have to renegotiate that somehow, because next time around, you can't pay that kind of money. I mean, I'm always shocked when I see the money they're paying as it is, $400 million over a period of time. I'm going, after a while, it starts to add up to some real money.
Yeah. I mean, again, I always say to myself, imagine if we valued teachers the same way we admire that we pay professional sports.
You'd have happy teachers.
Well, I imagine, though, if we valued it in any way in comparison. And again, I'm not saying that these athletes aren't worth their money, because God knows they would argue that they are. But I'm just saying, it seems to me, you go to any college campus throughout the country, and you'll see enormous multi-millions of dollars will be spent on the football program. You go by the science center or the history department, and you'll see that it usually needs a coat of paint. There's cobwebs in the corner, and and basically it's kind of the runt of the litter.
Sure.
So that's
you're saying life isn't fair.
I'm saying that we have different values.
Sure.
We don't seem to value the idea of higher learning as much as we value the idea of scoring a touchdown.
Well, that's true.
So I'm not saying that football and everything. I enjoy it. I enjoy watching it. I'm not denigrating it at all. I'm just saying that I would like to see a little bit more emphasis put on the academics and maybe a little less on the sports. But I digress. Can you believe it? Another 2 hours has gone by.
This is amazing to me that we have, this time went by quickly, but, thanks to our Robert Pankow and Julie Marcus, the supervisor of elections, I thought we got some good information out today.
Yeah,
good show.
Good real estate call, too.
Yeah, good call there as well. So if you didn't get in this week, get in next week, right?
That's right. We'll see you next Sunday from 7 to 9 a.m.
Thanks for being with us.